Welcome to this Somatic Slow Flow Psoas session. For today's session, you can grab a couple of blocks if you have them for your lunges. A blanket would be great as well. And you can land in a seat. I'm going to start kneeling. And before we start, I just wanted to map the iliopsoas region for you. The iliopsoas is a really important bundle of muscles that buttresses your lower spine, and it's really important for upright posture, for stabilizing our upright posture. It's an intrinsic core support for us because of where it's located in deep to our abdomen. It's a primary hip flexor. It also plays a role in lateral movement through our spine, and it's a swinger. So it helps us with ease in movements like walking. Because it is deep to our abdomen and it's behind our abdominal viscera, and our abdominal viscera is composed of smooth muscle tissue, which is involuntary muscle tissue that can have a reaction to our stress response. The psoas is close to our central nervous system and close to our abdominal viscera, so it's said that it can also respond to stress. So when we're really stressed, we might either do a curl up movement to kind of brace ourselves, right? Or we might do a startle movement and move into an extension like that. So with that in mind, we're not going to diagnose our psoas and kind of what might be happening with it today. We're going to offer our bodies a whole range of movements, both contraction of the psoas in different ways and expansion of that region, and gather information about how we're moving and how we're moving from this area of this trunk support. The iliopsoas comes from the base of our ribs, and it buttresses our lower spine, attaching to all the lumbar pieces of our spine, and then it comes through our pelvic bowl, kind of on the inside of our frontal hip point, and attaches to our upper leg bone. So it's a vital connector for our lower and upper bodies. I would totally recommend taking a look at it on Google later and seeing if you can map it a little bit better with some visuals. So let's begin. We're going to start on our side. I'm going to go on my right side here and start with a psoas slide movement. It's a somatic movement for that region. You can let your head come onto a prop. You can take your right arm forwards and bring your knees a little in so they're in line with your hips. Take a moment to let your abdomen soften towards the ground, and you can let your left arm be wherever's comfortable for you. And then we'll let our left leg, our top leg, slide out so the big toe touches the ground, and then slide that big toe towards our torso and draw the knee in. And if you can, see if you can get your whole left sole of your foot to press into the floor. So there's almost a little bit of that rolling away of your thigh bone, that external rotation. So you're kind of curling up in a little ball, and you can tuck your chin. And then we'll slide that leg away from us. You can keep the big toe on the floor until your leg comes straight out from your hip. Float your leg. And without arching in your low back too much, take your leg behind you. So you might feel your glute activation, your upper hamstring activation. You could even put your hand on your low back and feel for length there. And your big toe can come back to the floor there, and you can slide that leg in. You might even use your hand to curl into a little ball. You might tuck your chin. And then reach that leg away from you. And once you come in line with your hip, float your leg. Yeah, and then let your leg come behind you a bit without arching in your low back, extending through your hip. Now you can keep going with this, make it a bit of a slide, give it a little bit of a pendulum-like movement. And when your leg comes behind you, you could even take your arm over your head and diagonal. So your arm reaches sort of in front of your face. And you could also breathe with it if you choose. So you don't have to, but you could exhale to curl and inhale to open. You're also welcome to inhale to curl and exhale to open, and see how that's different for you. And with your awareness in the left side of your lower back here, the front of your left hip, what feels more natural for you or more comforting maybe? Is it this drawing in movement, or is it this expanding movement? And then you can let yourself rest there and close your eyes if you like. And notice the two sides of your low back, the two sides of the front of your hips. And track whatever's different there for you. And then we'll roll over onto our other side. And one thing that's interesting, that could be interesting for you about doing the other side, is you get to notice the differences between the two sides. So I'm going to take my left arm forwards, head on a prop. I've got a blanket there, knees about hip height. And take a moment to take one breath on your side. Let yourself drop into being gravity fed. And then locating that right psoas region, right side of your low spine, into your upper thigh bone on the inside, and you can slide that leg in. Try to get the whole sole of your foot to come onto the floor, and you might tuck your chin and curl in, a little bit of a rounding to your spine, and then slide that leg away until your big toe's in line with your hip. Float your leg and reach your leg behind you. You can try to straighten your leg as well, explore really creating a long line without arching your low back as best you can. Bring that leg in, foot to the floor, maybe the whole sole of the foot. Draw it in, so that's an activation. Bringing your thigh close to your chest, and then slide it out. And if you'd like to add the arm, of course you can float your leg and diagonal with your arm. And when you're working with this tissue, deep to your right side of your spine, deep to your hip, you might think about hydrating it. So getting an image of getting a little bit juicier in this area. Sometimes I think about my body acting like seaweed. The psoas with Liz Koch's work, keep going with this, is related to the filet mignon of our body, which it is in the animal. And if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, you might think of it like a cucumber instead of a dried up string bean. So exploring that, you can let yourself rest for a moment. And in this moment of playful pause, did you notice any differences left to right? And do you now? Taking a breath there. And then let's roll onto our tabletop position. So you can come on up into tabletop. If you like having blocks under your hands for lunges, take those at the top of your mat. Hands under your shoulders, knees under your hips. And let's round our spine and see if you can round a little less through your upper back and a little more through your low back. You might even kind of lean backwards to feel that, scooping out your abdomen. And then coming forwards a bit and arching through your spine. And see if you can arch a little less through your low back and a little more through your upper back. Maybe your head follows that arcing pattern. And you might move a little forwards, even getting a bit of a wrist stretch. And we'll go through that a couple of times, rounding and arching, and keeping in our mind's eye our experience of embodiment, that juicy tissue alongside our spine into the front of our hips. And for you, that might be activation that creates that, or it might be softening, depending on how you're feeling today. And then coming to a neutral spine there, and you can tuck your toes and reach back through a down dog, pedal out your feet. Can you breathe all the way down into the front of your hips? And maybe there's an experience of kind of softening and deepening the front of your hips, as if the front of your hips were nostrils and you were taking a big breath in. You can take your feet together at the back of your mat there and reach your right leg up into the air. You might open your hip, bend your knee, maybe even rotate your ankle. And take your right foot on the inside of your right wrist, so knee to nose. You might drag the foot forwards with your hand. And you can come up onto your blocks here. And then roll over your back set of toes so you're on a point, and bring your knee to the floor. So you're in a 90-90 lunge shape. Your legs are about 90 degree bend. And there, let's lean into the left hand on the block or on the floor, climb up on the right knee, and then reach the right arm up into a twist. You can clip your right hip back to the back of your mat and in a little. Lengthen through your top side. Another option here is to flip your palm towards the front of your mat and reach over your ear like you're doing an extended side angle. And take a breath into that whole right side of your lower spine. And then we'll circle that arm back down to the floor and climb up. So if you have a tender knee, I would say put a blanket underneath it. And you can climb up so you're in that 90-90 with an upright spine. Interlock your hands, web your hands together, and then take your hands up above your head. And notice if you tend to arch a little here, can you lift your back set of ribs, drop your tailbone and your pubic bone, and reach up. Maybe your biceps come a little more alongside your ears there. You could even pulse your arms back behind you a bit. It's okay if your elbows are bent too. Exploring a little bit of resistance that might be there in your shoulders. And then we'll take our hands forwards like you're saying no, pushing something away from you. And tuck your tail and round your spine, tuck your chin. And see what you notice there in the front of your left hip. You can also tuck your tailbone, and as we were doing in our cat-cow, instead of overly rounding through your upper back, can you round a little more through your low back? Take a breath. And then let's come on up and get long there. And take your hands all the way back down to your blocks. Let's shift our left shin, our back shin, to the right. Curl in, and can you catch that foot with your right hand? So your left ankle with your right hand. And then you might be able to come back up and hold that heel in towards your seat. So it's a little less of that longer variation you might see. It's a little bit tighter as you pull your heel in, compact your hips into center, and you might roll open for a breath, kind of standing on your left knee. That's where the blanket might come in handy. Press the ground away with your bottom hand. And then we'll come on out there and tuck your back toe. So you're in a long lunge. You might wiggle your toes back. Option to move your blanket if you had it. And pulse back through your back heel for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, we're gonna walk our blocks or our hands around to the left long edge of the mat so that you're in a wide-legged forward fold. And then bend your left knee. So go to the back of your mat, bend your left knee, walk your blocks all the way, or your hands all the way over to your left knee with it bent. It's almost like you're trying to slot your left knee into your left armpit there. And arc through your right side. Arc through your top right side, and also try to bow your right waist away from your mat. Take a breath. Boosting your low spine towards the ceiling a little. And then let's walk our hands, blocks, all the way around to the front to frame your front foot. You can take those blocks forwards and step back into your downward facing dog. pedal it out. In your down dog, option to stay a little. Pick up your right foot and rotate it out. So you can kind of suck your right hip into your right thigh bone up into your hip, and then turn your knee and your foot out, and then try for a downward dog with your foot and your knee pointing out a bit. You might bend your knee a little, you might straighten your leg, and you might get a bit of a deeper experience in the right low side of your low back. That kind of flank area, maybe a deepening into the front of your hip. And then you can switch sides. So your left upper thigh bone kind of sucks in. That's a bit of a psoas engagement there. Turning your knee and your foot out, bent knee or not, and then reaching back into down dog. And you might be getting a little whisper of a side bend into your left flank. And then coming into the center. Your breath in, your breath out. And then left leg high. Let's take our left leg high. You can open that hip and rotate your ankle, press into your hands. And then we'll take our knee to nose and take our left foot on the inside of our left wrist. And that might be a good spot to put your hands on blocks. Take a breath there, and we'll turn onto point onto our back set of toes and lower our knee. Landing in your right hand, you can take your left hand to your left knee, roll your right lung underneath you, and let your left arm come up, finding your twist, compacting your hips. If you like, you can take your top left arm and flip your palm forwards towards the front of your mat, and reach it over your ear, maybe even arcing your left side of your spine towards the ceiling. And we'll circle it down so that our hand comes down. And this might be a good spot to blanket your right knee as you come up into that 90-90 shape. If you can remember which index finger knuckle you had on top, switch it out. So it's the weird way. Create that webbing. Try to keep the pinky finger webbing tight as you take that up above your head. Nice. And you can let your back ribs float up, your front ribs soften down. Think about your ribs like you're dropping a set of curtains or dropping a set of blinds, and they hang from their scaffolding at the top. And you might pulse your arms back behind you with your elbows bent or not for 5, 4, 3, encountering some resistance there, perhaps in your shoulders. 1. And then we'll take that forwards and start to round and explore rounding a little through the low part of your spine, tucking your tailbone a bit, maybe minimizing the excessive round in your upper back and maximizing a bit more in your low spine. And then can you come back up with a little whisper of that through your hip flexors? And you can release your hands and take them back down to the blocks. And then it's your right back shin that swings across a bit. And if your left hand can hold your ankle, and then you can pick it up behind you and move your hips a bit back and rotate your torso a bit up. And see what you feel. It's almost like you're standing on your left knee, like your left knee is a screw and you're screw driving it into the earth, rotating out of that. Take a breath, center your bottom right shoulder. And you can come out of that and tuck your back toes. Might be an opportunity to move your blanket and pulse back through your back heel with a strong and long back leg for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And we can take our fingertips or our blocks around to the right edge of the mat and start to bend into our right leg. So again, it's the whole sole of your left foot trying to make contact, maybe even lifting that back left arch. And walking your hands over almost like you're trying to slot your right knee in your right armpit. And you might walk your blocks way over and arc. Explore arcing through that left side. That psoas tissue buttresses the left side of your low back, so can you kind of widen it? Think about widening it to the side. So instead of it being ropey and tight to your spine, you're exploring some breadth of space. One more breath. And then walking all the way around to your front foot. You can take your blocks forwards and step back to a downward facing dog. And then we'll play with a bit of psoas engagement here. Can you imagine you have no knees, or even if they're a bit bent, try not to bend them further so they're kind of a little bit stiff. And then pick up your right hip and really suck it into your hip socket. So that hip is going to elevate, and then step it forwards. And then pick up your left hip like you have no knees and step it forwards. You might come up onto your fingertips here or grab your blocks to give you a little more airspace. And then pick up your right hip and step it forwards. Pick up your left and step it forwards. And keep going with this kind of little sort of elephant walk towards the front of your mat, and then we'll go back. Pick it up, lower it. Pick it up, lower it. Getting a little sacrum elevation, SI joint elevation. Back. Maybe your knees are a little bent to make it happen, but try to keep your legs almost a little bit stiff so a lot of the movement is coming into your hips. And then if you're way back there on your blocks, you can take them out, hands to the earth. Let's take our right leg up, bend the knee, open your hip if you like, stay long in your low back. And then right foot on the inside of your right wrist, again. Now this time, our left hand, so opposite our front leg, can come way out to the left, and you can take your right hand on your right knee. So you might choose to fall into a block or let your hand fall to the floor. It's almost like you're trying to take that left hand opposite of your right hip. And then you're kind of coming away from your right leg. And can you get a side angle in here, kind of away from your leg? So it's this right side is getting elongated. You might even arc it towards the ceiling a bit. Think about juicing up that tissue, cucumber instead of string bean. And then walking all the way forwards, framing your front foot, stepping back through that foot. Left leg high, bend your knee, open your hip, stay long in your low back. And then left foot on the inside of your left wrist. And we'll walk our right hand away. So you might be coming off of your mat. You might choose to do that on a block. Your legs are staying the same, but your torso is choosing to arc away. And you can take your right arm over your ear and maybe boost the left side of your lower back. Press the ground away. Engage your back leg. And circle it all the way to the front again. Let's take our right knee, pick it up, bring it forward so you sit down, cross your ankles in front, and roll all the way down onto your low back. Beautiful. And let's take our right knee in towards our chest. It's that knee flexion, hip flexion, pull it in. And your left leg, you can choose to lengthen it and gently point your toe if you like. So draw that front, that right thigh bone close to your torso. And instead of really rounding your back into the floor, can you press the back of your pelvis into the floor and be a little more neutral through your spine? Instead of tucking that tailbone. Yeah. Finding that. And now we're going to let go of our right leg, float our arms, but try to keep our thigh bone and torso close together. If you like, you can kind of activate the front of your abdomen by lifting your head and chest a bit, but try not to curl to look at your belly button. Try to look up. So your neck is long. Take a breath. Draw your thigh bone and abdomen in towards each other, and maybe you float your left leg. And then we're going to slide that out and release everything. So let your legs come out. Do a little jelly roll through your legs. Wobble them. Let your shoulders get heavy. And close your eyes and track sensation right to left in the region of the psoas. What do you feel? Record the data. Just like your front of your hips are big nostrils, can you imagine taking a big breath of fresh air through your psoas nostrils? And then left leg in. Let's take our left leg in, turn your right knee, big toe towards the ceiling, point your long leg, and squeeze in. Squeeze your thigh bone towards your torso. And then keep a bit of that engagement. Start to transfer the strength from your arms into your hip flexor region. And you might bring up your chest a bit, look up with a strong long neck. Draw in thigh to torso, hold it. You might float your right leg for a breath. You could also hold your head if you've got neck mischief going on. And then release everything, slide out through your left leg, jelly roll your legs. And close your eyes if it feels okay and track what is happening through that whole left side, through the front of your left hip. Engage, release. All right, let's draw our right leg in again. We're gonna draw it in, hug it in with our hands. This time, float your left leg and point your toe and reach through the inner line of your leg. You can lift your head and neck. You can take your hands behind your head to hold your head, but press your head into your hands, look up, and draw your thigh into your torso. Then your left leg can come up and lower down to hover above the floor. Left leg can come up. Try to keep your back pretty neutral here, so press your pelvis into the floor. One more time, leg comes up. Reaches, press your head into your hands, draw your knee in towards your armpit, and then release everything out. You can open your arms and jelly roll your legs and maybe sigh. Waking up this tissue. So we're activating in a hopes that we get to gain control and then gain more release. So you can draw your left knee in, draw it in, hover your right leg. Maybe lift up through your head and chest, perhaps taking your hands behind your head, pressing your head into your hands, draw your thigh bone in, a little bit tight, gently tightening, right leg to the ceiling, neutral, back, reach it away from you, hover it above the floor, knee into armpit, top knee into armpit. Up again with your right leg, lower it down. Maybe with your breath, exhale up. Inhale, open. Intensify it gently, and then release everything out. Open up, wobble, wobble. And let your pelvis become as heavy as possible. Noticing the residue of that practice. And then we'll roll back over onto our right side. And do a couple of those slides without thinking about it too much, right? Exploring this full range. And noticing how you might set up for movement. Like, do you try 110%, or is there something else going on? Do you tend to go slowly? Do you tend to go quickly? Do you work your edge? And then you can release that side. Notice and switch. So you're on the other side. And something to get curious about, I just forgot to blanket my head, because you can also do this with your arm under your ear, right? So whatever works. As you're exploring this movement, does it feel more fluid? Can you connect to a bit more juiciness in this area? You might use your top arm. And you can rest there. And as you're ready, you can find a spot to settle. So that might be lying on your back. If you have a couple of blocks, sometimes I'll put those blocks underneath my knees and roll on back with a bit of support underneath my knees. You could also sit in a seat. Your hands could be wherever is comfortable for you. And find that spot where you can track and notice and map the residue of your practice. Sometimes when I work with this area, I feel a little more connected top to bottom. Or I might notice my low back is a little heavier to the ground, right? After the session, I notice that there's a bit more willingness to get gravity fed. So you might notice that. But what's your experience here as you get to know yourself a bit better? And for the last few moments, there's an opportunity to slow down your exhale phase of your breath. Maybe even notice the pause at the top and bottom of your breath. And you're welcome to stay here for a little longer, or you might start to roll your head side to side. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Maybe point your toes, rotate your ankles and your wrists, and reach. Get long. Wherever you are, whether you are on your back or in a seat, take some time to come on up. And if it's a gesture that you like, you could put your hands together at your heart space and acknowledge that you took time today to attend to yourself. And maybe you consider about how to pay the benefits of your practice forwards to relationships in your life, beyond that, and to the earth. Shanti, peace. Thank you for your presence and attention.